Hello everyone. Wanted to do another little walkthrough video for another template release here. This one's called Motto. So the idea of this one is to put some of those game day mottos and some of those encouraging mottos, things like that, in a graphic form to use in kind of a cool way. So I think you'll find this one's pretty simple to use. But let's walk through the layers and see some options here about how to put these things together. Alright, so we're just going to start at the top of the layer stack as we always do and just go through options. So we start with our color grading. So again, this is just the little pop at the end there that's just going to give some color and contrast just to make these things a little bit more dynamic. But again, we could open that group. There's a couple of color grading layers. Those can be turned on or off, change opacities, whatever you like to kind of suit your taste. We have our facial highlight boosts to brighten those highlights on the face to make the portraits pop a little bit more. Below that we have some normal text layers. So all the text in this is normal text. So the cool thing is you can edit any of this text to say whatever you would like it to say. So we have a bottom line of text here. There's our name or whatever text you would like on that bar there. And again, the links to the fonts I'm using in my samples will be on the product page. And then this name box is just that box that goes in behind the text. You can double click on this box and make it any color that you would like if you want to customize that color. You could also change the opacity and things as well. Alright, below that we've got a couple groups here. So you'll see marked in red is always where subjects go. So we have the first one is our foreground subject. So this is just a place to put a subject image kind of up front. And clip to that is just a lightness layer, which is going to boost the lightness of the subject a little bit. But you'll see if we expand this group, it's going to tell you drop your subject right here. And we're going to take a look at how we do that in just a minute. And below that is an option if you wanted to turn on to colorize the background. This is a hue saturation adjustment layer. So you can just come up to your properties window here and you can move these hue saturation adjustment sliders around to create different color effects as you would like. So if you want to customize that option is there. We have some texturing that goes over everything in the back here just to give it a little more dimension, a little more interest. Then as we drop below that, we're going to look at our next red group. This is the background subject. For me, I think it looks kind of cool to put an action shot or something in the background here. But again, the fun thing is you can make these look however you like, whatever your ideas are. That's the good thing about templates. You get to make your own thing out of them. So attached to that subject group, and we can see if we expand here, this is where we drop our subject in. We're going to talk about these shadow options in just a second. But attached to the subject group, we have some subject brightness on that one and a desaturation. Below that, I've got some pre-made text options in here. So we have our work hard, play hard as an option, make the last move is an option, one team, one goal, step up to the plate, and get in the game. And so again, you could make this say it whatever you wanted. The easiest way to do that would just be, to pick any of these formats that you want and just Command-Control-J to copy it. And you can turn the original off, and then again, it's normal text, so you can double click and you can just type in whatever text you would want that to say. So very easy to make your own custom text on that. So let's delete that for now. We'll turn this back on. So below the text is kind of just like this base shadow here that can be turned off or on. And that's just to give it a little bit of a, even though this is a two-dimensional kind of design, to give it some three-dimensionality to it. Below that shadow is some more background texture, kind of fades down into the foreground here to create a base if you're on a full-length subject, to give it, again, some texture to stand against. And then an overall background color, which is just a solid color picker, which again you could change. And you can see it's going to interact with that background texture to create a fade there. Okay, so you can customize that as well. Alright, so what I'd like to do is drop a subject or two in and just take a look at how to put these together. And again, the way that I envision putting them together, but it could be completely different based on your style and mood. So let's start with the background subject. I'm just going to expand this group here and get this ready to drop a subject in by selecting the subject here layer. And let's jump over here. Let's grab this guy to put in the background. So I'm going to drag him over, drop him in, and then Command or Control T so that we can prepare to size and place this guy. He's pretty close to the size I would like, but we could make him smaller, make him larger. Oh, not quite that large. Let's get centered back up here. But let's say we like something, you know, kind of this size right here. Well, I can just place him where I like. Now, the interesting thing about having text in the background, as long as we position our subjects in such a way that we can still visually tell what it says, it's going to work. So we just want to make sure that our subject is placed in such a way where things kind of make sense visually. Okay, so I think even if I get him kind of over here, we kind of know what things are supposed to say. We see enough pieces of everything so that it makes sense. Let's maybe bring him down just a touch like this. And now we're going to take a look at, there's a couple, again, these are just some base shadow options here. And I think, let me say this about shadowing, is I think it gets overcomplicated sometimes. And I think we tend to overthink it quite a bit. So the idea here is just to give the subject something to feel grounded against. And so I think we can go very basic and it be quite effective. And so there's just a couple basic options in here. That's 1 and 2. 1 is just set wider. Now here's the cool thing. It doesn't matter what size these, you could duplicate as many of these as you need. If you have a subject with both feet on the ground, you know, you could duplicate these to make them the same. But you can also transform these, so Command or Control T. And so I could make this more narrow and just kind of position it, you know, under the toe. I could drag this out to make it feel like the body's starting to shadow a little bit more. So again, the idea here is just to give your subject a placeholder on the ground. That's all these things are about, and that's all you really need for it to visually work. So try not to overthink your shadowing too much, and you'll save yourself a lot of headaches. So I'm just going to go something like that, which completely works for all I need to give that idea, you know, that there's some sort of contact happening with some sort of ground plane. That's all these are about. But again, resize these, move them around, use them however needed. They're just there to make things faster and easier. Alright, so if we look at options on the subject, so here's our desaturation. You could go full color. You could go semi-desaturated by bringing opacity down here. You could even change this to like a colorize by bringing saturation up, you know, playing with your lightness values and things like that. So there's all kinds of options here. I just personally think it looks really cool with that black and white. And then again, this is just some brightness, again, to make the subject kind of feel like this bright high-key environment here, which I think looks really cool. So let's close that group up. We can see in our background, since this is normal text, we can make the text whatever color we want. But one thing I want to point out on this, let's select, again, I thought it looked interesting to put some color in here. What you're going to notice, based on how this gradient overlay and things are set up, these colors you can make very dark, and it's still going to show some color through this. So you can see on our swatch, it looks like it should be very dark red, but because of that gradient overlay and the way it's interacting with the text, we can make that very dark, because if we make it bright, it gets very bright. Which again, can look very cool depending on how you use it. It just all depends on what you would like to do. So I'm going to keep it nice and dark. And again, you could make it any color just by shifting the colors around. I'm going to leave it kind of a dark red. I think that looks pretty cool. Alright, so let's go up to our foreground subject. So we're going to open this group. And then we'll, let's jump over to this one. We'll grab our foreground guy and drop him in here. And again, I just thought it was cool to have another option to put kind of an action pose and then your standard straight pose. I mean, you could totally use this with just that alone. I think it looks very cool. Or again, there's just a group in here if you want to drop another subject in, size them however you would like. So again, I just thought it looked cool to have a little feature of them in here in their standing pose, something kind of like that. And then again, your text updates, you can set this up however you like. So if I wanted to change his name here to, let's put in a new name. Now what I like to do is just type it as one word. If you like this effect like this, and just pick the first or last name to change colors up on. So if I wanted that to be red. And so you're kind of creating a separation of first and last name without the space. But you could add a space in there. You could do this however you would like. Again, make sure that you're doing things the way that kind of speak to you visually, that you like the idea of. and that looks cool. And there you go. It's as simple as that. If we were to drop another subject in, let's turn this one off. Turn this one off. So say, for instance, the soccer girl here, let's drop her in to the background. Again, sizing is pretty good. I don't think we need to change too much here. Maybe something like this. Okay, that looks good. And again, here's where we could take our shadow. So let's go with like this longer shadow. And so maybe I want to feel like, you know, there's some under the shoe, but then the body's starting to cast some shadow. So you could extend this and move things around. Again, don't overthink the shadowing too much. That's going to give it all the feeling it needs to feel like, you know, she's grounded to a surface. Let's change our text up here. I like the 1 team, 1 goal for the soccer one. And again, you could change color values in this by just selecting the text. And, you know, let's say we wanted to make this one, let's say a shade of green. Let's go a nice desaturated green like this. I'm going to copy this value. Then I could come down here, let's say I wanted to change this one and make it the same. There we go. So we can add some color in there. And again, the same on the foreground. We would just come up to our foreground group. We grab our foreground subject, if you want a foreground subject in there. And drop her in place. You could size, all that good stuff. So say something kind of like that. Again, you can move her around anywhere. Again, I think a little off center there looks pretty cool. And same thing, we would change the text here. So let's double click here. Alright, so we got the name. So let's say in this one we wanted to make her first name kind of match maybe a school or a team color. So you could pick this green, but make it a little more vibrant. There we go. We can update this line of text here. So let's just say Wildcat Soccer. And then we'll just make this whole thing match this green. There we go. And that's all there is to it. So you can see pretty quick. Easy to drop them in and make these changes. And again, just think about when you put your background subject in that you can see enough of that text to just still be able to tell what it says. And you should be good to go. And again, for the facial highlight boost, this subject doesn't really need it because her face highlights are pretty bright, but just to show you what they do, we can select our mask over here, so make sure our box is around the mask. We'll grab a white brush. I'm going to go ahead and just turn the flow up to 100. And then if I paint, let's say over this dark side of the face, if I wanted to brighten it up, you can see how that's just lifting like all the highlights on her face. If we do her whole face, you can see it's going to get very bright. And these are solid color fills, so if you didn't want it to be solid white, we could come up to more of like a skin tone-y type of color. And you don't need much color in there, just a little bit, say somewhere like this. And it actually push a little bit of warmth and brightness into the face there as well. Maybe bring that opacity down a little bit. There we go. That looks really good. So, hopefully you find this is super simple to use, and that you get a lot of use out of it. Hope it makes you some money and all of that fun stuff. And we'll see you in the next one.